What's up, guys? So we got a different format today. There's a video on YouTube. Some of you guys may have seen it. It's called The Rise and Fall of the #1 Quarterback in America. It's about my story, and I've never seen the actual video. I sat down with Tyler Webb, the creator, because he interviewed me for the video, but I've never actually seen it. And it always is suggested for me because I follow Tyler's work, and I'm always like looking at what he's doing, which he does a great job. So I'm sure the video is great. And then also just search terms with my name and always working on the back end of YouTube that I was like, you know what? Doesn't make sense for me to watch it alone. Let me watch it with you guys and react in real time.
So I really had nothing but success really my entire athletic career.
She misses Browne. Browne see if he can make a
state
pay.
championship game.
Sinatra, great grab.
Yeah.
In the end zone.
Funny enough, that game was against Sefo Lufau, who ended up being the quarterback at Colorado. Lane Kiffin and Clay Helton were at that game.
Takes the lead.
This is Max.
That game we made. The second game we made SportsCenter top 10 for a bounce pass, trick play.
2013, ranked ahead of guys like Jalen Ramsey, Derrick Henry, and
Jalen Ramsey, man.
But
Once upon a time committed to USC.
He was already getting labeled as one of the biggest busts in college football history.
Like where do I go?
The biggest bust article is in the background of all my shots. If you guys haven't noticed it, it's on the top shelf.
So how did Max go from
I'll hide from that.
NFL,
Print it out. Remind myself every day. A little motivation.
Sleep on the floor of Gary V's office to becoming a lead.
Yep, working for Gary V, my first job after football. Sam
This is a
Darnold
great
hooked
question,
up.
and this might be the best clip of the whole show.
Was there a time that you realized your football career was ostensibly over?
You know, you would have never got this out of me back then, but
Max Browne was born in 1995 in Sammamish, Washington, a suburb east
Yeah,
of
the
Seattle.
Platte,
Here,
boy.
He grew up the youngest of 4 boys and
Let's
quickly became
go,
obsessed
squad.
with football. This was due in large part to the fact that
Damn, he did his
brother,
research.
was the first
Look at
ever
that
quarterback
stadium.
at Skyline High School, which had
Wait,
just
real quick.
opened, and
Sorry, I don't
the
know how many
fact
times
that
I'll
his
pause
older
it throughout
brother
this
Mitch
thing. When I was there, the stadium did not have this left section at all. So my high school, public high school, suburbs of Seattle, I'll keep this quick, but we were nationally ranked for like 6 straight years. Nationally ranked, public school, suburbs of Seattle. That's crazy. Don't know if it'll ever be done again, to be honest. But this section on the right-hand side, that was the home section, and the left-hand section was not there. We once played Oaks Christian, and that was like the domino that really sparked the renovation because Will Smith, Joe Montana, Wayne Gretzky flew in. It was like the best team from Southern California, played the team in Washington, my squad, and they flew in, and it was just like not enough standing room, and our stadium just was, it was on ESPN and kind of like rinky-dink, and they made this remodel, but it unfortunately was not there for my time, but it looks sick.
was the first ever quarterback at Skyline High School, which had just opened in 1997. And a 5-year-old Max Browne had a front row seat to it all.
I mean, I do remember at least.
Damn, he did his
bits and pieces
research.
of
How
it.
did he get
I
those
mean,
flyovers?
literally, you know, when I look back, hey, what are my first memories? It is watching my older brother
Did you hire
lead
someone to
my
get those flyovers? That's
hometown
legit.
to a
I gotta
state
copy that stuff.
championship, and that really, honestly, like set the direction of my childhood identity. And I don't even think that's an exaggeration. I mean, even in my hometown, football was big, not even just because of my brother, but the program really took off in the suburbs of Seattle, and we were really good, not only in the state, but nationally. But I remember him winning state. I remember
being 5 years old and my mom would make me take naps
like a 6-hour drive
to be
away,
able to get the
7-hour drive
privilege
away.
to go to my
And
brother's
they said
playoff
that
games because as a
or I was
5-year-old,
not- or I had to take a nap.
couldn't be being
that
cranky in
day
the stands,
be
had to be
able
locked in.
drive
You already know we
down
were
and
locked
watch
in.
the whole game, which I was not pleased that I had to take a nap. But
That's
you better
funny.
believe I sat my ass down. went
That's
to
funny. I
sleep
said the
because I
nap
knew
story
I
right
wanted
there,
to,
but in my
wanted
brain,
to
I
catch
said
that game
10
at
seconds
Columbia
earlier.
River. But no, it was fun, and like I said, it just, you know, from then on, it was, you know, at 7 years old or however old you are in first grade. With that,
I wonder
first
what
time that
play I was
recess
breaking down
happens,
mid-season in the
ball rolls
whiteboard there.
out, I was quarterback, and I was really quarterback Max for the next 15 years or so.
Max quickly became known as the chosen one in his neighborhood for his above-average height, strong
All right,
arms,
all right. Just for the record, the chosen one, it was not like a LeBron thing. Of course not. The chosen one is more of just kind of a catch-all term. I was very much like the quarterback in my community, and I was like a good basketball player and football player, but the chosen one, I get it, but and that's my home. That's the best man at my wedding right there, Nick Splendoria, who said that, but there's levels to it. Let's just leave it
especially
at
with
that.
football. However, it wasn't until a few years later that
Oh,
he
let's
started
go.
to realize just how unique his talent
Let's
was.
go. To Jordan
Yeah, I remember in
Simone,
fourth grade,
Arizona
my
State,
offense,
great
we were
free
running,
safety.
like,
Caught that
spread
touchdown
offense.
right there.
And we're talking, bubble screens and slants and go balls. We're not talking like, full field progression reads, but we're, like I said, I remember like throwing for like 3,000 yards, and we were the only team in the conference that threw the ball.
Youth football, 5th grade. We were running no huddle offense, spread offense, only team in the league. It was awesome. That's like 2005. Had wristbands. Great. I made our team made like Sports Illustrated for kids. Oh, let's go. Browne doing work in the paint. I stopped playing AAU freshman year of high school, and I lost my ability to dribble, which then I lost my ability to shoot. Then I couldn't score. Then I just became like a defense hustle guy, knock down the occasional three, that kind of thing.
Different. And then 7th grade, you start projecting towards high school. I went to a public school. The quarterback at my
I'm talking over a lot of this, so I apologize. This video has a bunch of good details. Tyler asked a lot of good questions.
Up as well. I was a bigger kid. So there was like no quarterback when I was in 7th grade, no quarterback in the 8th grade class. Then you project forward to the 9th grade class, and it was like, hey, I think I can beat those guys out when time comes. And again, doing the private quarterback training, you're doing the process and all that. And I think that's where
those are the early days of the private quarterback training. Now it's mainstream, right? If you're a big time quarterback recruit, you have a private QB coach. Back then, it was somewhat cutting edge. It became mainstream like the back end of my high school career, but
sitting behind another star quarterback his freshman year, meaning he'd have to watch the Skyline Spartans win their 3rd consecutive state championship as a backup. However, even on the bench, Max's talent was undeniable. And before ever starting a single varsity game,
Payson Williams, 5-star receiver right there.
The University of Washington. The following year, the 6'5", 210-pound sophomore was named the varsity starter and led the Spartans to a 12-2 record after throwing for over 4,000 yards in 50.
We lost the state championship, though, man. We lost our first game and our last game.
My sophomore year, again, replacing a hot shot.
Let him off the hook, too. We were heavily favored in the state championship game and came in complacent and messed up. We responded next year. This is my junior year.
Whether it
won the
was
state
real
championship
pressure
then.
or pressure that, hey, my 14, 15-year-old self.
Yeah.
More
Brandon Huffman right behind me there. He's still active in the recruiting world.
State championship game and lost. And I wore a lot of that on my shoulders of, hey, what could have I done differently?
I had the state championship game every year of my high school career. Got 3 rings.
Ruin might be a strong word, but I also think it's there's some realness to that, to like lose that game and not like my entire childhood dream was to bring a state championship to my hometown. I didn't really understand the true meaning of prayer when I was younger, but like that was always a thing that I would pray for, is like, let me bring a state title back to my hometown.
That was always my prayer growing up. That's funny.
That goal be right on your fingertips.
Dear God, when I'm a senior, please help me win a state title with my best friends. That was always the thing too. I guess I should probably start pausing a little bit. That was always the thing for me is, I always had like aspirations to play college football, and that was always like the goal. And I always like, dream of the NFL. But my older brother was the state player of the year in the state of Washington, quarterback, had tons of success, tons of stats, won a state championship. He never got Division I opportunities. And so it's not that I didn't believe in myself growing up, but it was almost like that was like a little bit of fantasy land, or like elementary school. In middle school, when I like was able to see the trajectory I was on, I was like, all right, we got something here. And the quarterback, like I mentioned in that video before me at my high school, was a 5-star quarterback, number 1 quarterback in the country, Jake Heap. So I got exposure to kind of like the trajectory that he was on, but like grades 1st through 5th, which is even crazy to say that. It's like a little kid. The fact that I was like putting expectations on myself in my brain about college and football is crazy, but it's real. And I know there's probably a lot of quarterbacks that are big time recruits at every year that can probably relate to that. Oh, but the dream of like playing college football and playing at USC, like that was like fantasy land. Like, all right, I mean, hopefully I can get kind of the Washington State offer, kind of 5th, 6th grade, so to speak. And then obviously it cranked up big time, 8th, 9th, 10th grade.
And I really point back to that I think that moment, established some grit in me. I think that whole next off season, I kicked things into a new gear of like, this ain't happening. Let's go pedal to the metal kind of thing and really dig in. And I point back to that as like almost a positive, because I think for me and my team, it made us go to another level. But that is one point that, and it's maybe more of a team aspect, but I do think it impacted me individually of, my mindset on work and the little things, and the difference between winning the job and not winning the job, the difference between winning and losing as a team, very much stems back to that sophomore year heartbreak.
As one
That's
Seattle
still the
Times
case
writer-
for me today. So just a quick summary if you weren't like following along there, but my team lost a heartbreaker sophomore state championship game. And it's always funny, like I'm a 30-year-old man, like talking about high school, but it's real there. That loss has ingrained certain values in me of like preparation and details and process that I carried with me through the rest of my football career and a little bit to today in life. And, little things like standing behind the line, finishing through the line. Like when I'm at like a goofy workout class now, as like a 30-year-old man, like there's still that sophomore year of high school. Hey, we lost the state championship because we didn't do the little things. You got to do the little things or else at some point it's going to sneak up on you and XYZ is going to happen. Like, again, as a 30-year-old dude, I don't think I think about it every single day, but that game and that loss and that season was very much a like key pillar in my life.
Better put it, from then on, Max followed a similar formula. He outworked everyone, and he won. And he won, and he won. By the time he graduated, Max had led the Spartans to 2 more state titles, winning them both. He'd been named the Gatorade Player of the Year twice.
Okay, quick story, real quick. So that day right there, Russell Wilson, and then that's Nancy on the stage right there. That's when I got Gatorade National Player of the Year. It was my last day of high school. It was December 19th, 2012, because I graduated high school early. So after Christmas break, I went to USC while all my other friends returned to high school. And that was Russell. So it's December. That's like in his rookie season, right? In his rookie season, 2012, that December. And he showed up at my high school, got on the loudspeaker for the whole school to hear, and was like, proud to announce Max Browne, Gatorade National Player of the Year. They surprised me with the trophy. It was like a whole thing. Just a super, super special day. They like take you to dinner that night. It was all my friends. It was like all the senior guys on my football team. They took us to Buco de Beppo on Gilman Boulevard, I believe, in Issaquah, Washington. Shout out Buco de Beppo. But like, I had no idea that was coming. I think I saw a newspaper article in like October or November that I was in the running, but I didn't even know that it was a whole presentation and the whole deal. And so that was super cool. And then I went to a practice. I think when I won the award, it was funny because I saw the Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn dynamic, and Matt Flynn was like very like the type of guy you'd like want to sit and have a beer with and kind of like chill with. And it was funny because at that time it was like, oh, this go-getter rookie like beat out Matt Flynn. And Matt Flynn very much had the energy of like, yo, I'm a dude that just got paid more money than I ever thought. You can call me the guy that, didn't follow through with his contract, but I'm chilling. I'm a backup quarterback. I'm good to go. He was just super cool to me. Moral of the story. And obviously Russell's had a hell of a career.
And was the #1 quarterback in the class of 2013.
Kenny Bigelow, baby.
Like
hey, Biggs. He was my roommate freshman year alongside Chris Hawkins and Sua Cravens. Kendall Fuller. I won the Army Award that some of you guys have seen in my content that there's the Gatorade National Player of the Year, and then there's the Army's version of that. It's the whole TikTok that went viral of like I got it over Derrick Henry, which just funny. But Kendall Fuller got like the defensive version of it, and we went to the White House, visited the Pentagon. That was sick. I saw the highest ranking or met the highest ranking officer in the Army. I should know the title of that. But anyways, Kendall Fuller, super good dude.
Often Baker Mayfield. But Max's self-described fairy tale obviously didn't end there.
The process was awesome. I mean, to be going to school and having coaches stop by and, again, that whole fairy tale narrative where I have stories of, Nick Saban pulling me out of art class and talking to me on the phone. There's Ed Orgeron roaming the hallways.
That's a good story.
And, waving to me.
Drop a comment down below if you want to hear the Nick Saban art class story when he offered me.
The movie The Blind Side came out when I was in like 8th grade or so, and you see that on a movie screen, and
Ed Orgeron,
like, living that.
Both those guys, once upon a time. I guess Saban wasn't.
I mean, especially as
Saban called me, and I took that call from the cafeteria of my high school, and then Ed Orgeron was the lead recruiter for me at USC at the time. And so, and this is funny because I saw him in the cafeteria, but this is when USC's fresh off of sanctions. And so at the time, I don't know how it works now, but at the time, anytime a coach would come through or visit your high school, it was illegal to set a meeting and talk to the recruit, which sounds crazy. That sounds ridiculous. Like, Max, what are you talking about? That wasn't a rule. I always heard about coaches talk or players talking about talking to coaches. Well, the workaround was you would just say, hey, you ran into the coach at school. And so it wouldn't be like a designed meeting, but it'd be like, it was all just fake and funny, but it was illegal. It was breaking the rules if you met with the player off campus, especially if they were underclassmen. I think maybe if you were a senior, you could. And so USC, fresh off of sanctions, was the only school that followed that rule. So even though I committed to USC and would talk to Ed Orgeron on the phone, he would never talk to me in person at my high school. And it was the only school that followed the rules. And he would just wave to me across the hallway, again, because USC was so scared. Every other coach would be like, oh, I ran into them. And then we would sneak into my high school football coach's office. And especially as recruiting heated up for me, that was in the off season, like a multi-time a week occurrence. But it was funny. Ed Orgeron following the rules. People forget about
the kid
that.
who watched my older brother be the state player of the year, and he didn't get Division I opportunities, and you're kind of
This is what I'm talking about earlier.
following this process and this whole recipe of success. It was awesome. I don't think my parents raised me in a way where I never really got caught up in the whole hoopla of recruiting, the whole game, and that you see nowadays of guys, picking one hat, throwing it away, and guys going on a bunch of these different visits. And to me, I was very wary, and maybe almost to my own fault, I didn't want to lead these.
I don't know if I've ever said this on a social media post. I've said it behind closed doors. But when I did my announcement to where I was committing to USC, and at that time I thought it was bad ball to do the whole like throwing the hats and all that. It's become kind of mainstream, and I feel like coaches take it on the chin a little bit. But before I announced, they played like a little highlight montage, and I was overtook by emotion. I started crying by myself. I've never said this out loud, but like they dimmed the lights in my gymnasium. I'm announcing my commitment. They put on like a little journey through my football career, like a little 3-minute montage. And luckily it was dark, but I got emotional kind of realizing the stakes of that moment of, hey, this is that 5-year-old Max that's, playing recess quarterback and running around with his shirt off as a little kid with AstroTurf cleats. Like, I was living the dream of that 5-year-old kid committing to the University of Southern California, the quarterback's dream, the pinnacle of what it means to be a quarterback. I was like crying a little bit there. And then I remember being like, the nerves took over. I was like, I cannot be crying as the #1 quarterback in the country announcing where I'm going to school. And I kind of like shook those emotions into place. But for a good like 30 seconds, I was like overwhelmed, and luckily the lights are off, so no one saw it.
Coaches on, like if I only had like 16 offers as the #1 quarterback in the country.
This is a pet peeve of mine. I was the #1 quarterback in the country. I had like 16 offers. If you're a guy that is a 5-star recruit and you have over 30 offers, maybe I'll give some grace. Over 35. That's a joke, because you know at a certain point, there is no way I am going to that school. I'll never forget. It was my coach called me. It was Oregon State and it was Vanderbilt. No, Oregon State and Duke. Duke would like randomly send me a bunch of mail, and my high school coach sat me down one time. I was like, Max, is there any way you go to Duke? And I was like, Coach, there is no way I go to Duke. Don't return the call, or at least return the call and say, hey, Coach, not going to waste your time. But at the time, I don't know how it works nowadays, but it was like such a badge of honor to be like, oh, he has over 40 offers, over 30 offers. Give me a break. If you're over 35, I'll give some guys grace. At that point, you are wasting people's time and you are just doing it for the clout. There was Duke, and I remember Oregon State on that list. Coach Langsdorff. I wonder where he is now. Danny Langsdorff. He like came to my game in person, and it got to a point. I like sneaky liked Oregon State. My quarterback coach when I first started went to Oregon State, Taylor Barton. That was my first trip outside of just going to the University of Washington, which was in my backyard, of like going to the campus and throwing in that indoor facility. And Oregon State was rolling. Oregon State, when I was in high school, was consistently a top 25 team with Jack Quiz and James Rogers and Sean Mannion and whatnot, Matt Moore as well. And so they were good. So for, like early on when I didn't have tons of offers, I was like thinking about Oregon State randomly. But then at a certain point, I was like, I don't want to waste that coach's time. Head coach Matt Taylor, tell Oregon State there's no way I'm going there.
Guys
so he doesn't show up to my game,
40, 50
waste
offers,
his time when he could be.
When Duke reached out to me,
kids.
I was like, I'm never going to Duke. When Vanderbilt reached out to me, I'm
Duke.
never going to Vanderbilt. So I didn't play the whole recruiting game as much as.
Funny how your brain works. Like the stories that
did,
trigger.
But I had it, and it
when you say one thing, re-trigger 5 months later.
First question of, you know, the expectations and whatnot. I had it in my mind that I wanted to play at a blue blood program, because if I want to be the best and I'm the top guy, that's what you do. You go play at a blue blood program. And in hindsight, like there's a lot of guys that don't have that mentality, right? They go to the hometown school and all that. And that was not how
that whole dynamic would have been so much different with NIL.
Right in my backyard. If I was 5 years younger, that could have been different, because Washington was a lot.
I don't know. It would have been an interesting conversation if USC was giving me $250,000 at a high school, which as a high school senior, again, I got zero money as a 5-star #1 quarterback recruit in the country in 2013. Nowadays, what, $250,000? That is probably light. It is probably 2-3 times as much. Don't quote me on that. I got to find out so I can be more exact there. But let's just say USC was offering me $250,000 at high school, and Washington State was offering me $700,000. Like that would have been. Keep the hometown kid in there, go to the other side of the state. That would have been a really tough decision. I feel like nowadays we just assume that those 5-star quarterbacks are going to the big time programs. But, you know, back then it was like genuine factors that were top of mind for me was, you know, can this school get me to the NFL? That's an overrated factor. If you can play, whether you're at North Dakota State or USC, they'll find you. Education, I very much valued that. Like that wasn't just lip service. I wanted to go to a place where I was going to get a good degree. Again, as a 30-year-old man, does your degree really matter? The degree doesn't matter. The network and the kind of floor that network gets you in, I think matters. Maybe more to come there. But like at the end of the day, like money would have been the main factor, which would have been wild. 17-year-old Max, like negotiating 6, maybe 7-figure deals, or having to be wary of that. When, hey, I just got home from a little high school party after homecoming and, oh, I'm getting offered 6-7 figures. Like I cannot imagine how that would have played out. I don't think it would have changed me, knock on wood. Maybe that's famous last words. But like, can you guys imagine that? Can you imagine having to process that amount of money? And I guess nowadays, let me say this. I don't even feel like bitterness towards like missing out, because I literally can't missing out on that money, because I literally just like can't relate to that being a legitimate factor, which is wild.
A lot better when 5 years later. But I just had in my mind, wanted to go to a blue blood program, and naturally I was down between Oklahoma and USC. Alabama was third, but it was really Oklahoma or USC. And at that time, Oklahoma and USC were the quarterback universities.
Maybe
Oklahoma
another good video.
Landry Jones and Sam
Final
Bradford
4 schools for me were
off,
USC, Washington, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And unpack the decision.
They had. So I just had that in my mind, and it was an awesome process. It got to it was stressful a little bit there. I mean, you're making the biggest decision of your life up until that point. But I felt very confident, and that's why I stuck with USC even after they, went 7-6 my senior year of high school. And USC was the pinnacle school, and it was the process was a blessing for sure.
Now, at this point, I think it's worth mentioning that up until this moment, Max had had nothing but success his entire athletic career. His formula of setting a goal, working hard towards that goal, and then achieving it had never failed him.
Wait, this is a cool story.
Working hard towards that goal.
The USC people will appreciate this. So if I rewind, this is cool. I never seen this clip. So that spat on my right foot, that's how I only have spat on that leg. Darnold's actually the quarterback right here on the left side of the frame. But so this is fall camp. Darnold and I are neck and neck in a competition. Going into fall camp, that 2016, for the starting battle, who's going to replace Cody Kessler? I felt like going out of spring, and Clay Helton had told me this coming out of spring. He told both of us this. He sat us down after our spring practices, had a meeting together, Darnold, me, and Helton, and said, hey, if we had a game tomorrow, Brownie, you'd be our starter, but you guys are both playing well. I got 2 NFL caliber quarterbacks, so we're going to take this battle into fall camp. And so I knew it was neck and neck. I felt like I had this slight edge because, if we're being honest, I was like a leader. I was a vocal leader on this team. I was playing well. I was playing good ball. We both were. This wasn't just, hey, sometimes quarterback competitions in college are like who can make the least amount of mistakes rather than just, hey, both guys are functioning. Who's functioning at a more elite level? I think if you ask anyone, that competition, we were both operating the offense. We had a really good football team, hence why we made the Rose Bowl. But back to the original story. That spat right there on my right ankle, I got rolled up on probably the end of the first week of fall camp. Full on rolled ankle, like, the whole deal. X-rays, the whole situation. But I knew right when it happened, not only was I pissed, there's a clip, I should try to go find it, of me like I banged my fist on the turf. Not because of the pain right after I, again, got rolled up on, but I knew right then and there, if I couldn't practice, I was going to lose this job. I knew right then. I've seen this story before. We see it every single year in fall camp of, hey, some quarterback, it's neck and neck competition. One guy happens to get injured and the other guy never looks back. I was hyper aware of that dynamic. And so I was doing everything I could to make sure I kept practicing. Those first couple days after were iffy, but luckily I wasn't a dual threat guy. But I knew I did not work for 4 years behind the scenes at USC to get rolled up on and have a high ankle sprain force me to not only get benched, but I would have had to transfer. And I'll keep rolling because this is a good story. But at that time, so the transfer portal as it works today wasn't a thing, but you could transfer before school had started. So you had fall camp, and then our game versus Alabama was like August 31st. But then school started like the next Monday, so like September 2nd. And so one of the games that my family was playing behind the scenes or prepared for, which you can't blame us, was that, hey, if Clay Helton named a starter on, let's say, August 16th, and it wasn't me, could I transfer somewhere else from August 17th, in between August 17th and September 1st, land somewhere else and potentially start for them? The reality is, doing that at a Division I program was probably far-fetched, but I don't think it was necessarily crazy to think that could have been done at a different program, or at least just get on the field somewhere else. Again, that was probably not feasible, but I say that because I wasn't as wary of it, but behind the scenes, my older brother and my dad were very wary of the timelines. And in a weird way, it was almost like, hey, if you know you're not going to start me, announce Sam early on in fall camp so I can go transfer somewhere else before school starts, enroll, and maybe try to win their job. Again, I was not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was very much locked in. As this whole thing played out, reminiscent on these stories, my dad and brother were prepared for all options. And actually, sorry, I'll keep going. This is good stuff. When people ask me like, oh, Max, like, what would you have wished Clay Helton had done? Because, nowadays, like, any sort of like, oh, I got screwed energy, which is not the case. But if you look back, I've had people ask me like, oh, well, Max, like, Sam Darnold's an NFL quarterback and you're sitting here making YouTube videos. Like, obviously Helton made the right decision. Like, what do you wish he would have done? In hindsight, I think Clay Helton always knew that in his heart of hearts that Sam was going to be the guy at some point, whether it was, hey, he wins the job at a fall camp, whether it was week 3, week 6, week 8, whatever it is. I think he always knew that deep down. I think he had good intentions and was hoping it would be me, but his gut deep down knew that there was no way he was going to keep Sam on the bench. And I wish he would have said that to start the summer and give me the option to beat him out, stay and beat him out, which I think I would have done. I genuinely do. I was so ingrained in the USC program. I had, again, I was a vocal leader on that team. I had, paid the dues there. And I believed in myself. I believed that I could beat this dude out, which is obviously what I did. But then I got benched and the story went the other way. But at least say that and give me the option to potentially transfer to a Pitt or whatever. It wouldn't have been Pitt because they had Nate Peterman at that time. But let's say, give me the option to transfer to a Fresno State or a Washington State or whatever and have 2 years of eligibility rather than just 1 year as things, played out of me going to Pitt where, hey, if one thing goes wrong, a la shoulder injury, that's the end of my career. Give me that option. given the fact that I think deep down they knew Darnold was the guy. And I totally get it. Darnold's a stud. We all knew he was legit. I always knew he was legit as well.
Working hard towards that goal and then achieving it had never failed him. So why should he expect anything different heading into USC?
USC in January of 2013. I graduated high school early. Matt Barkley had left for the NFL, and my expectation with no hedge was that I was going to do exactly what Matt Barkley did and win the job and start as a true freshman and have success and be at USC for 3 years, hopefully win some awards and bring a championship to USC and go to the NFL, and everything's going to be smooth sailing. And I got to USC, and it took me – I definitely was a guy who needed a red shirt, and comparing it to current
took me a while to get adjusted to college football speed of the game. It's actually funny. I golfed this morning with I golfed this morning with one of the other quarterbacks that was in that 2016 QB room, Holden Thomas, which that 2016 QB room was awesome. It was me, Darnold, Thomas Fitz, I think Michael Bowman was there, Matt Fink, Jalen Green was in and out because he was playing receiver, and then Holden Thomas as well. We were talking about just, old stories, and he was asking me about Kenny Pickett and Sam Darnold, and he was like, oh, did you know Kenny Pickett would be an NFL quarterback or like NFL first rounder? Because Kenny was a true freshman when I was at Pitt. He was our third stringer. It was me, DiNucci, and Kenny Pickett. And Darnold and Kenny Pickett are the two guys, and it's funny because they're the two guys that are still playing right now. They did not have, at least from my perspective, they did not have the traditional freshman adjustment period for a quarterback getting adjusted to the speed of the game. Those guys had an innate ability for what it meant to throw with anticipation and not have to see guys open and throw into empty space. And that whole, most freshman quarterbacks I played with, scholarship and walk-on, there's that first fall, there's plays and there's a sense of being overwhelmed with the speed of the game and not having it be part of your DNA of what it means to throw the ball out on time. Pickett and Darnold are the two guys that did not have that adjustment period. But yes, they had to get adjusted to the playbook and their reads and things like that. But from the sheer speed of the game, you could put them in there as true freshmen and they could operate, which that to me, when I use that as an analyst, I use it both for the college quarterbacks of, hey, do I think this kid's going to be legit? How quickly does he adjust to the speed of college football is a big time factor. Jackson Dart right now, the fact that he had high level success at USC as a true freshman, to me that means something, even 5 years later, because I do think that is a factor in, hey, when you have to adjust from college to NFL, are you equipped to do that? Well, look at how he adjusted high school to college. I would argue, I never played in the NFL, but I would argue the adjustment from a speed of the game standpoint from high school to college is more abrupt or more extreme than college to NFL. People might disagree with that, but I just think the delta is so wide. And so to bring it back, the fact that Kenny ended up being a first-round quarterback didn't surprise me 4 years later, because I remember as a freshman how smooth, and he might say different behind the scenes when he's actually in his shoes, but how smooth that transition was for him as a true freshman.
Comparing it to current times, like, Dylan Raiola, that's the path that I thought I was going to have, right? Of you go in, you win the job as a true freshman, you have success. Obviously things aren't perfect as a true freshman, but that's the transition that I thought I was going to have. And it took me a long.
That's one thing. You guys look at my throwing motion.
You win the job as a true freshman.
As a young quarterback, it was always like ingrained in me, because that's when like Peyton Manning was rocking and rolling, to have the ball high and like throw over the top. Look at right here how much
when you have success. Obviously things aren't perfect.
Like I'm literally like scrunched down, because my entire childhood I was told throw over the top. Don't throw sidearm. Throw over the top. It actually worked against me. Look at how much power I'm losing. Like if I was a boxer, no boxer punches like this. And in hindsight, I wish if I was coaching my future kid now of how to throw, that whole over the top narrative, you lose power. I made it work and it became my throwing motion and I was fine. But, throwing athletic and being able to throw from here, not only is it more powerful, I think it's more athletic and it's more comfortable than this image right here.
As a true freshman, but that's the transition that I thought I was going to have. And
right there on the right.
It took me much longer than I thought to adjust to college football. And I definitely think my confidence took a hit. And again, I think it comes back to, like we were talking about, that throughout my entire life, I had that consistent success on the back of working hard. And that was the recipe I brought to USC. I won weightlifter of the year as a backup quarterback my redshirt freshman year. And I kind of got to the point of trusting the work. And no matter.
Two things I'm most proud of in my football career. One, getting named captain by USC and Pitt, voted by your teammates for obvious reasons. Super proud of that. But also, second one, named weightlifter of the year for USU football. I'm on that trophy next to guys like Ray Malaluga and some beasts there. And not just for the award, but at that time, it was the end of my redshirt freshman year. I was down in the dumps. I was struggling. I was seeing a sports psychologist. I was not playing well. But I told myself, no matter how this thing shakes out, it will not be because I did not work. I will not get outworked. I used to always piss me off when people would say, like, oh, he works like a walk-on. Like when walk-ons would outwork guys. I was like, that ain't going to happen. I'm going to work like a walk-on. And obviously it didn't necessarily come to fruition per se. But that trophy is still in the USC weight room. And I take a lot of pride in that.
Here, but that's what I went back to. I think looking back, when people ask me, hey, what could I have done differently? I wish I would have.
Weightlifter trophy. Harry and Marion Kuiper Weightlifter of the Year, Max Browne 2014. It's in my backdrop.
I was
now you guys know.
To be an elite quarterback, but at times I think it let me, I remember being in astrology class as a true freshman, studying the playbook on the side for like a spring Tuesday practice. Because what they tell you is treat every practice like the Super Bowl, treat every practice like a game.
If you say treat every practice like the Super Bowl, I'm going to treat every practice like the Super Bowl. But that worked against me.
But I think
because I wasn't able to settle in as a young player. I put too much pressure on myself. Practice is practice. Practice is where you're supposed to grow and learn.
To our conversation,
the fact that and this is my own fault. I could have approached it better.
Went on to redshirt his freshman
and just
year.
For like sometimes when I say that, people think that, oh, man, I was some like big, stiff, nervous guy. No, I hit it really well. But I was walking in, like I was saying, to a Tuesday practice in spring of 2013 as a true freshman, thinking like, this is the practice that I'm going to win the USC starting job. That's never going to happen. You're going to need to string practices together. And I just look at kids now, especially when I'm around them. And some of my best players are the kids that are the guys that played carefree. In fact, I was literally saying that today. You look at my teammates, the guys that are still playing in the NFL, it's not that they're slappies, not that they didn't care, but a lot of those guys are the ones that had a lightness. Is that an appropriate word? The air was light around them. Their football pursuit wasn't just grinding all the time and intense and like, hey, this is football, this is a grind. Guys like a Leonard Williams, guys like even a Sam Darnold, guys like an Uchenna Nwosu, they worked hard, sure, but they had fun with it. There was a joy to it. Those guys weren't necessarily the biggest grinders on our football team. They weren't necessarily like the hardest working guys. Again, I'm not saying they didn't work. Practice is over. They would go home. They wouldn't, obsess over every last detail, which I think at times worked against me.
Sat as the backup the next 2 years in 2014 and 2015. Which in today's college football would have led many of the top
right behind me.
to just
look at
transfer.
him. Look at him.
Max was taking a different approach.
Here, I'll pause it right there.
Transferring as failing.
In today's college football would have led many of the top QBs to just transfer.
Young Goff right there.
But Max was taking a different approach.
I viewed transferring as failing. I viewed transfer.
Another cool story for you guys. You might find interesting if you're watching this deep into the video.
I was wired is like, hey, if you transferred, especially as a top guy,
would have led many of the top QBs to just transfer. But Max was taking it.
That field right there, it's Cathedral High School in Los Angeles. I would drive on Sundays and train there. That field, and maybe even that session, is where I met Miller Moss, current Louisville quarterback. When he was in fourth grade, he would do like the fourth grade sessions, and I would come after doing the like high school, college sessions, which was cool. And then this is when Bryce Young was Cathedral's starting quarterback. I believe he went there as a ninth grader, or he was supposed to go there as a ninth grader. And so I met him as an eighth grader. And I remember him being like the next up chosen one while I was the QB at UFC, obviously. But like, I remember Cathedral High School, remember meeting an eighth grade Bryce Young, and sure enough, things worked out for him.
A different approach.
I viewed transferring as failing. I viewed transfer, that's just the way I was wired, is like, hey, if you transferred,
different era with
especially as a top guy, that means you failed in some regard. And I know that sounds gnarly. And that's why, again, I think the connotation around transferring is a lot different nowadays than when it was back then. Back then, I think there was some of that of, hey, if you were a transfer and you had to drop down to a school or go to a different school, the connotation around that was different. And I definitely think I added some negative perception of that. And I don't really know necessarily why that was the case. But that was just how I was wired. And I also think there was some of that, I wanted to work my way through that. And I did enjoy going to school at USC. And I did like that path. And then when I stepped on the field, it was very, very much like, a battle and whatnot. But they tell you to trust the process and keep chipping away and things like that. And I think I very much subscribed to that. And yes, by year 3, I wasn't starting, but I had a really good spring in year 3. And so after year 1, after year 2, going into my 3rd spring, that's when I took a jump. And that gave me renewed confidence of like, hey, we'll be fine.
Brandon Dawkins right there.
The process is going to work.
Played QB at Arizona.
Year 1 and year 2.
Receivers, that's Deontay Burnett right there. Jana Harris was with him too. Jana Harris, man, for USC fans watching this deep into it, he worked his ass off. Deontay did too, for sure. But Jana didn't always have the stats and whatnot. He was a stud. Is a stud. Still playing.
I'm going to take the Mark Sanchez path where I'm going to sit, I'm going to wait my turn, and I'm going to start as a redshirt junior and redshirt senior, similar to what Miller Moss is doing now for USC. And at that point, being the quarterback at USC, I'd rather be the quarterback at USC for 2 years, 1 year, than transfer to some other school. And you never know if you have to re-earn your stripes or how that plays out. And that's just how I saw the landscape.
And with the quarterback ahead of him finally entering the NFL draft, coming into the spring of 2016, Max had a great chance of becoming USC's next starting QB. However, much to the surprise of a lot of people inside and outside of the program, the redshirt junior faced stiff competition that offseason from a true freshman named Sam Darnold. Still, Max came out on top, and on August 20th, 2016, Clay Helton named him the team starter and a captain all in the same week. But less than 2 weeks later, Max and the Trojans were trounced 52-6 by the defending national champions and the country's #1 team. And while Max's performance was the least of USC's worries, the Trojans lost again 2 weeks later to #7 Stanford to start the season a disappointing 1-2. The day after the loss, Clay Helton called Max into his office and told
people sleep on how good that Stanford team was. It's funny. I just ran into KJ Costello at dinner, but I guess he was a true freshman in that game. He didn't actually play. Stanford was rotating quarterbacks, but that Stanford roster was legit. They had Eric Reed at safety, right, who just signed a contract in free agency, but he's been the Chiefs. He's a Super Bowl champion. They had a corner, that NFL guy. They had the Jets defensive lineman. The guy that drafted by the Niners, went to the Jets, first round pick. Gosh dang it, I'm blanking his name. Bobby Okereke at middle linebacker. They had Phillips, who's on the Bills, right, at another defensive tackle. They had some dudes.
Tim Darnold would be replacing him as the team starter. Max recalls crying his eyes out for an hour and being hit with a wave of uncertainty about what was going to happen next.
I never was diagnosed with depression, but man, it was hard getting out of bed in those mornings. And man, it's hard. I've always been a motivated kid, like we've talked about, but man, it was hard to stay locked in and motivated and engaged that whole season because you kind of check out, and it's
the whole. I think people overuse the word depressed, and I'm very sensitive to that. Like, I don't want to be. I never was clinically diagnosed with depression, like I just said right there. And I never say I was, I was depressed, because it just feels, again, extreme. But after I got benched at USC, I was just like numb. Remember, I referenced it there, but I went to a little chapel area, like a little. I don't even know what you call it, like a little praying chapel area by the business school at USC. And after I got benched, I texted my girlfriend, now wife, my high school group chat of like my best homies there, and then my college group chat, and high school best friend, college group chat of like all my roommates, and then my family group chat, and was like, hey guys, got the news. Big picture, I'm doing okay, but I'm gonna be off my phone for like the next couple hours. And I bawled my eyes out. That was tough, man.
It's somewhat natural. I'm sure Bryce Young is dealing with that right now, as getting benched as the Panthers starter. And so
things turn around. Mentioned Bryce Young getting benched by the Panthers, and then sure enough, He's still
Everyone
their
says, hey,
franchise
hard work
quarterback
always
5 months
pays
later.
off. That's not the
Good for
case.
him.
Hard work can give you peace of
Good for him.
mind, but
He was on my
just really
flight. I
tapped
flew to
into,
Charlotte for ACC
where
Media
do I
Days
go
in
from
June.
now?
He was on
And
my flight,
it was
sitting first
depressing.
class. Surprised no
That
one
was
was
the
like bothering
lowest
him.
that
He
I'd
kind of
been
blends
in
in,
my
to be
life,
honest, because
'cause
he's
you just go to
not
a
the
point
tallest.
where, like, where do I go from now, or where do I go to now? Again, this whole equation that I've trusted my whole life didn't work straight up, and that
The
tested me
equation.
for sure. That was a very,
Work
very
hard,
difficult time.
treat people right.
Max led USC's
Things will
scout team
happen.
for the rest of the year as the Trojans went on to win 9
Didn't
of their
work
next
out for me
10
at-
games under Sam Darnold, including
me
the
for
Rose
both.
Bowl, which Max watched from his couch after transferring a month prior. But his football journey wasn't done yet, and neither were his dreams of getting drafted to play in the NFL, even if he didn't truly believe it at the time.
You would have never got this out of me back then, but I do think the reality sets in of like, hey, I've been in college football for 4 years. I haven't done squat. Like, this idea that I'm going to be an NFL first round quarterback, like, all right, there's many steps that we got to, accomplish before that. That being said, if we did this interview back in 2017, I would have said, and this was true, like, chip on the shoulder. I'm going to Pittsburgh. It's a year-long business trip. Let's work harder than we ever had. Let's dig in. That was very much my mindset.
Gosh.
I got in the best
That
shape.
was after the Penn State game. Had like a goal line quarterback run play, and I got popped underneath my chin, and my helmet came off, and then the second defender like scraped my eyebrow at the goal line. There's a cool picture. Maybe I can try to find it and link it. But yeah, that press conference was not fun.
Shape of my life. Like, that's how I was wired, and that is true. What also is true is, again, I think, I just the mentality is like, I just want to have success. Like, I just want to be a successful college starting quarterback, and then let the chips fall where they may. Like, let's chill a little bit on the first round NFL draft pick conversation. So I think there was some of that, but again, like, and maybe this was contradictory, my mindset very much, and this was truthful, was, all right, I got one more shot at this. Let's get back up. Let's get back on the saddle. If I go ball out at Pitt for one more year, just like Nate Peterman did at Pitt, transferring from Tennessee there, then I can be right in the NFL draft conversation and have a successful year. So that was my mentality. And it wasn't just naive. Like, I can remember in the spring of 2016 when I was battling with Darnold, Clay Helton sat us both down and said, guys, I got a problem. It's a great problem to have, but I got 2 NFL quarterbacks on my couch right here, and I only can pick one as the starter. And I remember I had a coach at Pitt tell me, hey, there's this other guy that played before you who's now on an NFL roster, and you're playing at a higher level than him. And I don't think they were lying in my face, but it wasn't just like this naive, like.
You'll never forget that. I had for my spring at Pitt when I transferred there, I didn't play that well. I was getting used to the offense. I remember being really frustrated because I knew it wasn't even the frustration coming off the USC season. I just knew I was a way better football player than that. Like, I had practiced at a really high level at USC, which is like, no one gives a fuck. I get that. But so, like, I went to Pitt being like, yo, I know it didn't work out for me on Saturdays at USC, but like, I know I can play. And I got to Pitt, and I didn't have the best spring there. I wasn't awful, but I wasn't groundbreaking per se. But then I had a really good start to the fall camp. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. This conversation did happen at spring. I think maybe I was just being tough on myself. I struggled at times during the scrimmages at spring ball at Pitt, but we had some really, really good 7-on-7 areas. So I guess that wasn't true. Anyways, school, the coach came up to me, one of the assistant coaches was at Pitt, and basically said that, like, hey, you're playing quarterback at a level we haven't seen around here under this regime, Pat Narduzzi. Basically referencing to, like, hey, Nate Peterman, who just got drafted as an NFL quarterback, he's like, yo, you're playing better than that. And I don't say that to dog Nate Peterman. He's had a much more successful career than me. I say that just from a reference point of, like, where my mentality was at that summer of being like, I can do this thing. Like, hey, Darnold might be the first quarterback taken off the board. Sweet. I'll be the second one taken off the board. Let's do this thing. And I was aware of, I needed to have a great year for that to happen. But, like, this wasn't just throw up the white flag moment at Pitt, like kumbaya kind of thing. This was like, let's get it.
I don't have talent. I'm missing the boat. It was very much, let's just get back on the saddle, keep working because you're doing things in practice. Let's just try to do it in a game kind of thing. And so it's kind of a roundabout answer, but that's how I approached it.
Max would end up playing just 6 games at Pitt in 2017 before suffering a season-ending shoulder injury against Syracuse. He spent the next 18 months rehabbing, but after the 2018 draft came and went, Max found himself with one more shot to fulfill his dream of becoming an NFL quarterback.
I had a workout with the Steelers in that same facility, Pitt facility, in December of 2018. And I remember being on the right hash, and they asked me to throw a comeback, a 20-yard comeback to the left sideline. And I could get it there. And, if you were watching me throw, you'd be like, all right, whatever, it's a fine throw. But I remember in my mind being like, that's not going to get it done in the National Football League. And not only the literal arm strength, but the confidence in the back of your mind to let it rip kind of thing. And that's when I remember getting back on the bus and they drive you to the airport. That's when, and it took me 2 more months to admit it to my dad and my family and my girlfriend at the time. But the initial injury and then the workout for the Steelers 18 months later, coming onto that bus.
That period's so tough that I've never heard anyone talk about it because it's not fun. And there's no I think everyone needs to go on their own journey. But from the point of when it's over, your football career, to taking the next step in your life, that period, for me, it was 3 months, which is short. For a lot of guys, that's 18 months, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. If they're being honest with themselves, you might not get every athlete to admit to this, but the moment they're deep down, they know it's over, to then moving on, they'll keep training and say, I'm staying ready and all that, and keep the dream alive, or their brain tells themselves that. But that phase is so, it's hard. And I've had athletes reach out to me on that. My biggest advice is just stay, take action. The worst thing you can do is go back to your hometown, stay stagnant, get comfortable in whatever becomes your new norm. And then it becomes hard to then go take a chance with this job, or, move here, or do this, or explore that, or, hey, I've always had an interest in that. The longer you wait, that phase, especially when I was 24 at the time, that might be different if you're 28, 29, 30 getting out of it. But that phase is really tough for athletes, and probably for anyone that pursues a passion for, for me, again, I was 5 years old. I was quarterback Max. At 24, you wake up being like, hey, I got to shift my entire identity. That phase is tough.
I remember, I can visualize it in my head right now, looking out the window of the bus being like, this is it. I don't got it in me anymore.
Now, at this point, Max told me he had lost his love for football. He said he felt beat down after chasing this one dream for basically his entire life. So he packed his bags for the East Coast, where he got a marketing internship with Gary Vee in New York City, a reality that proved to be much less glamorous than his life as a USC quarterback.
Remember, I had saved up $10,000 from my stipend checks in college, which again kind of speaks to how I'm wired of forward thinking and whatnot. And had that minimum wage at Gary, and I was able to make ends meet. I think, I remember I slept at my office for 3 months in the summer of 2019 at Gary.
Now, Max would spend the next 5 years
the office working for Gary in the summer of 2019. I would sleep in the lactation room at VaynerMedia. And it wasn't necessarily me trying to be like a hardo. I literally saved. Rent was it would have been $3,000. Would have been $2, $3, $4,000 for 2 or 3 months there. Let's just say it was $8,000 total. It could have been way more than that. New York City. I was traveling a decent amount. I had a boys trip, 2 boys trips I went to. I went back home, and so I was for 3 months, I can live at the office. I was doing grad school and finishing up my MBA at that time at USC, and so I was staying late anyways. And I became homies with the janitor there, and I was basically, just don't tattle on me. I'm okay. But I would get up early in the morning before anyone got into work, and I would go shower at Crunch Fitness down the way, and then I would walk back into work as if I was coming back or walking from my workout. And no one found out. It saved me at least $8,000. And then when I'd move back to LA before the pandemic, I bought a car for $10,000 cash. So in my mind, me sleeping in the lactation room at VaynerMedia bought me my first car when I got back to LA.
In between marketing jobs and commercial real estate. But eventually,
Position that next to the NIL money I'm missing out on.
Like, it didn't come out of nowhere.
When I was the backup quarterback at USC, when Cody Kessler on Fridays would do his like 2-minute drill, I would always be on the sideline and kind of messing around with like 4 or 5 people, and I would commentate the 2-minute drive. And so that kind of planted the seed of, this commentating thing might be something whenever the time.
The commentating started on Friday practices, announcing the 2-minute drive.
Like a freshman scrimmage.
Kessler's pass is complete to number 15, Nelson Aguilar. He catches it, falls forward for 2. Head coach Steve Sarkisian, who's also the play caller, is hurrying up to the ball. They're going to hand it out to Javarius Buck Allen out of the backfield. It'll be 3rd and 2 for the Trojans.
And maybe a look into my future about what could come. And so that happened in 2017. 2018 comes in. I'm saying, I want to try to get into commentating as well. And YouTube videos, breaking down Pac-12 footage.
Drop a comment down below if you've been here since the OG YouTube videos right there. The OG YouTube videos, breaking down footage in my kitchen. Drop a comment if you've been here since then. What a phase.
In Hermosa Beach in 2018.
Max went on to become a pre- and post-game analyst for
Chris
USC
Hassel,
in 2019, which he
first game I called right there.
Analyst positions with Stadium and SiriusXM.
UAB, La Tech, double overtime, phenomenal football game.
Than it did just 6 years ago.
Picked up Raising Cane's
This might be the best clip of the whole show because I think this is good insight for
not an ad. Wish it was. Raising Cane's is fire
as well. My pie chart has changed every year the past 3 or 4 years. 3 years ago when I was just getting
I respect this question too. You basically asked me how much I make, but more so the distribution of it.
And real estate was 10% of my income. And at that point, I very much needed to lean on my girlfriend to support me. Not in a huge way, but I don't think I would have been able to live in Los Angeles at that time. And then I would say up until last year, it was probably 50.
I'm hemming and hawing because this pie chart's changed for me a bunch over the past 3 years.
Summer, I have left and fully supporting myself. And then this summer,
I left commercial real estate in August of this past year.
My tax return for this year, because I still have deals that I'm doing real estate wise, it'll probably be
the 2023 tax return was probably
real estate, broadcasting, and brand deals from social media. Maybe a little bit less than a third for the brand deals on social media. And then looking forward to next year when I won't have real estate, it'll probably be 50-50 broadcasting income and social media brand deals.
That's an interesting YouTube video on its
someone
own.
Who 5 or 6 years ago was completely done with football to be making a career in the sport in a completely different way than he was expecting is impressive. But perhaps the part of this conversation I found most interesting was Max's perspective on how his career played out. And more specifically,
by the way, Tyler's crushing this video. This is really well done.
Close on this. There's an article that said that in your home office, you have an image of your high school team about to come out for your 2nd consecutive state championship. And then you have a screenshot of an article that talks about the biggest busts of all time with you as the cover. Do you still have that hung up in your office?
It's right there. It's in the backdrop.
Here. 2 seconds.
All right.
It's right here. It's in my backdrop of my content that I filmed.
Yep.
All decade, the biggest bust.
My wife hates it. She's gotten used to it now, but she used to hate it.
He's just doing his job.
That the fact that I printed it out and hung it up.
Motivation, man. It's not just me trying to be some hardo or whatnot. It definitely hits home for me. I think it's a good
use the pain to your advantage, or you can let it wear over you and make you bitter and resentful. See that all the time. Remember, I'm stronger because of those times,
that didn't necessarily pay off, and again, it puts a healthy
chapter in this book of life I'm writing.
Prove and that college football chapter may not have worked out.
Both can exist, too.
Chapter may not have come through, but kind of that
the bust chapter, but also celebrate the successes along the way in high school and whatnot.
Thanks again to Max for sitting down with me. If you want to listen to the full hour-long
wired, that's a phenomenal video. But to me, how I'm wired, that's the reality of my situation. I'm not gonna hide it, and I'm definitely not gonna, manipulate it to make it out to something that it's not. My college career was disappointing. It was a letdown. I came in with huge expectations, huge goals, and those didn't work out. It'd be disingenuous for me to sit here and be like, "Oh, my college career was the best thing ever." It wasn't. It was a blessing, don't get me wrong. Super fortunate to play Division I football. But when you're coming in as a 5-star number 1 quarterback in the country and don't even remotely come close to the on-field expectations that not other people have for you, but like you had yourself, it's disappointing. And that's what's in my bones. And I know other people probably feel similarly about their athletic or professional pursuits. That I think it's okay to acknowledge that. Still be grateful for the opportunity. I got a degree and met my wife there. It was an amazing experience, but it was not this sunshine and rainbows dealio. Anyways, that was fun. We're over an hour here. If you stuck around this whole time, please like this video. Share it to someone that you think might like it. I know there's some USC people watching and maybe some hometown folks as well, but Tyler crushed that video. That was really well done. I'm grateful and appreciative that he highlighted my story on that. That's going to be cool to look back on. And hopefully this video is cool to look back on, and the little nuggets along the way were enjoyable. But yeah, I'm posting content here on YouTube and posting the audio on podcast every single day, or at least YouTube every single day. The audio is now, 3 or 4 times a week. So check it out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.